Colossus turns to metal. Totally get it. Totally understand it. This woman makes a cloud of, listen, don't ask me. Don't ask me.
I mean,
X-Men, this is the day. X-Men coming your way. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Simply Amazing. We are so happy to have you back. We are proud to have you back. Well, I don't know what I'm doing here. Actually, honestly, it's been an interesting 23 and a half minutes of what we have taken in recently, and we're gonna talk about it in just a second. But before we get into it, why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves? Hello, guys. Welcome back to what is this, like Act 87 at this point? Like we've been doing this for like 500 years now. Right?
It's about as old as I am, like 20 something.
Oh my God, shut up, 20 something. Listen to you, as old as you are, with the other people on this podcast right now talking about being old at 20 something. All right. Enough, please. All right. Well, anyway, I'm Lisa. Hello, everybody. You can call me Lisa, aka the OG Nocturne. And we have a very, very, very special guest that we're going to introduce in a second. But before we get to our unbelievable, amazing, very proud to be here guest, I want to introduce my absolutely fabulous, lovely co-host right here.
Hello, I am your friendly neighborhood by Lauren. And I don't know what's up with all this, proud stuff you're talking about. Like, are we supposed to be having pride in something today? Is that what's happening?
Oh, it is. You know what? It's Pride right here at Simply Amazing. And we're going to introduce our guest for today, who is very proud to be here as well to discuss today's topic. We are talking about the Pride of the X-Men, which is the cartoon that came out in the 1980s that was supposed to be the big introduction of the X-Men to children. And thank God it wasn't, because I don't know that we'd all be fans of the X-Men today, that if it was. But before we get into all of that, let's introduce our absolutely phenomenal guest that we were very excited to have here. You can know him as Mav, aka Christopher Maverick. He is the co-host of the VoxPopcast, as well as Oh Gosh, Oh Golly, Oh Wow, which I did have the wonderful pleasure of being able to speak with a while ago. But Mav, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I disagree. I think that if Pride of the X-Men had become the introduction, like people would still be talking about it. I think that there were a lot of really, really good things happening in Pride of the X-Men that I think you are unfairly harsh on it because you've seen good cartoons. When Pride of the X-Men came out, we had never seen a good cartoon before, so we had very limited things to compare it to, and I actually think that for what it was very, very innovative. And you guys, because I have seen all the prior X-Men appearances on television as well. So given what they had to work with, I thought Pride of the X-Men was awesome.
I'm excited because this basically means Judge Lisa is out today, but now you get your friendly neighborhood judge. So I get to issue the final ruling to see who's right.
This is interesting. Okay. So here's the thing though. That was not the most confident awesome I've ever heard in my life. I'm going to be
yeah. It's like, I have some integrity. I'm not going to pretend that it's like I do understand that it is not a perfect cartoon. When you asked me which thing I wanted to do, I was like, what do I want to do that sometimes it's more fun to talk about the misses than the hits, because I mean, you could get anybody to come in here and talk about, House of X or, there's lots of stuff, we could, let's talk about House of X or, let's talk about Excalibur. I do that every week. I've got, I can do it, how often do you get to talk about, the power, it hit me like a fist. That's such a great line. It's quality programming that happens with Pride of the X-Men. It's like my favorite line of that thing of the entire film.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of that kind of
I was
you're not
very
wrong.
excited when Lisa was like, by the way, so we're going to talk about this if that's cool. And I was like, that's great. Because I had a couple months ago, my sibling showed it to me. You know, my sibling Skylar was like, oh my God, Lauren, have you seen this insanity? And the crazy part is that for me, when I first started watching it, the first few minutes, I was like, okay, this is kind of cringe, except the theme song. The theme song is a banger, but everything else was kind of cringe. But then I got sucked into it. And I think it's because I'm so nostalgic for the giant size X-Men era. And so I love seeing those costumes, like not the 90s costumes, not all this, because that's what so many people know now. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. These are the costumes I, first read the X-Men with. And, I was actually pretty pleased with some of the characterizations, but then others and some of the voices, they hurt. They hurt.
Yes.
There is not a good voice in Pride of the X-Men. Kitty Pryde is played by a 45-year-old woman.
But
and she's not. She's actually the actress who plays her is only like 25 at the time of recording, but it is an old sounding voice. It is a very mature sounding voice that was chosen for Kitty Pryde.
But I want to point out the actress who played Kitty Pryde is Kath Soucie, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Kath Soucie, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you have listened to a character and loved a character that was voiced by Kath Soucie, because she basically was in every single cartoon in that time frame. She was in Rugrats, she was in Dexter's Laboratory, she was in I looked it up. She was in everything. So when I listened to Kitty Pryde speak, I was like, oh, this is familiar. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's Kath Soucie. That makes a whole lot. Johnny Bravo, Looney Tunes. She was in Nicktoons. She was in Fairly Odd Parents. I mean, like literally everything she was in. So
if you're a child of the 90s and 2000s, like a little younger, she was the equivalent of what later became Tara Strong's job.
Yes.
Tara
Exactly.
Strong's been in everything. Kath Soucie was Tara Strong before Tara Strong was like that. She was in everything. And then if you go back to my era, I grew up in in an era of cartoons where Scatman Crothers and Casey Kasem were on every cartoon.
Oh yeah,
Like if you're Casey Kasem of America's Top 40 Countdown with Casey, that voice is just in every cartoon from when I was a kid.
Which most people don't know that Casey Kasem did the voice of Shaggy.
Casey Kasem was
Scooby-Doo.
Shaggy.
Yeah, most people don't know that. So that's your little trivia for the day, everybody. You're welcome. Case closed.
She should have just stuck with Shaggy. She should have let Kitty alone.
Well, there you go. So Kitty's only, talking about, so I want to actually go back for a second. We're not going to dwell on this. There's one good voice, I think, and that's the voice who does Pyro, because I think that's 100%. Like, it's just a random Aussie guy, and that's who Pyro kind of is.
Yeah. Well, okay. Is it good, or is it not offensive because of Wolverine? So
that's a good question.
There's so much to say about pretty much with both cartoons that I really want to talk about, which was Pride of the X-Men and the X-Men Adventure. We were talking about this when you asked which ones I wanted to talk about. Choices were made throughout this. And one choice was that for some reason that's not explained, and it's really complex, and there's like conflicting history from and recollections from various producers as to whose idea it was. But someone decided that Wolverine should be Australian.
Yes.
Offensively Australian, as in if I were an actual Australian person, it's like, you think we sound like that? It is. I don't know
overly
how to.
Stereotyped,
I don't normally,
maybe.
Yeah, overly stereotyped. I mean, like I normally think of Australian as more of a nationality than a race. But it feels like you I'm like whoever made this choice was trying to be racially offensive. It is such a cartoonishly thick and just insulting thing that, like, Shrimp on a Barbie, she's just a kid, and it's just like there's a lot of Wolverine offensively like caricaturized voice choices that were done with the Wolverine character. That, like, you go Pyro, it's like, okay, that's fine, I guess.
So so I'm gonna actually probably agree with you there, because I probably did enjoy Pyro only because Wolverine is so offensively Australian and incorrectly Australian that, like, and the other characters who have accents are also kind of awful, that when it comes to Pyro and
which is all the
his
X-Men.
part is so small, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, he's supposed to be Australian. He kind of sounds Australian. Okay, good. Thank God. At least he's not like Igor or like Toad. And I want to point something out that just came to me, because, as I've mentioned many times on this podcast, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and Wolverine, as an Australian Wolverine, makes a dingo joke, right?
Yeah, he's clearly Australian. He's not just that voice.
Yes.
He's a Australian.
But I want to point something out for the people listening. Okay, so in the 1980s in Australia, there was an enormous case of a woman whose baby was eaten by a dingo. Happened in 1980. In this television show came out in 1989. In 1988, the very famous movie A Cry in the Dark came out with Meryl Streep that famously had that line, "A dingo ate my baby," in it.
Oh God.
So for me, it's like, oh my gosh, literally a year after this movie came out with this famous line where this woman's child is eaten by a dingo, they're now putting this character who's fake Australian making dingo jokes. What is going through these guys' minds? What is happening? It is off the rails now. He's not even supposed to be Australian, and now he's Australian and making dingo jokes. I don't understand.
Yeah.
it's a problem. Like, and it's interesting because I feel like some people, like, off the top of their head, they're like, oh well, Wolverine's like rugged and animalistic. Australian can't be that bad. I promise you, if you have any thought that Wolverine or Logan should be any bit Australian or could pull it off, go watch PRYDE of the X-Men on YouTube. Like, just go, because you will understand just how wrong it is for Logan to, one, talk like that, and two, like, it's just it's out of control. It's almost unbearable. Like, if one thing, like, out of all the problems with the show, if one thing would have for sure got me to turn off the show, it would be that alone.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbearable.
So, I guess for your listeners, Hugh Jackman, who famous for playing Wolverine, is an Australian man who has, a little bit of an accent, and it's fine, right? Like, it's not like he disguises it a bit when he's doing the character of Wolverine, but just to listen to Hugh Jackman speak, like, in an interview, if Wolverine sounded like that, you'd be like, all right, whatever, that's a choice, but sure. This guy he's like a bad SNL skit that just goes on for, it's an SNL skit that should be 2 minutes long, but instead becomes 10 minutes and then gets done every week for a year. And this is like a thing that happens on Saturday Night Live. And it's grating. It is offensively weird.
It's the Pat of SNL. It's like, it's Pat. Remember Pat?
Yeah.
That awful sketch. That's what it is. It's like, oh my God, we're done with Pat. Don't make a movie. Oh my God, you're making a movie. Oh my God. No.
There's so if you look up the making of PRYDE of the X-Men on Wikipedia, they have an interview from Rick Holberg, which is taken from the book X-Men Characters in Their Universe. He was a storyboard artist and finalizer for PRYDE of the X-Men, and he says, I ended up being the voice director on the show, and I was forced to use the Australian version of Wolverine, which coincidentally foreshadowed the casting of Australian actor Hugh Jackman in live-action X-Men films, because all of this Australian stuff was popular at the time. Mad Max films, Crocodile Dundee, and so on. It was going to turn out in the comics that Wolverine was an expatriated Australian. The direction of the character never got beyond the plotting stages, and Wolverine remained Canadian in the comics. So that's what he claims. Everyone else who worked on, so he was the voice director. Everyone else who worked on the show and everyone who worked at Marvel at the time has refuted that claim. People are all like, no one ever told us that. We were never going to. Claremont, who was writing X-Men, he's like, no, this was not a thing that I was going to do. We don't know where he came up with that idea. But he claims he was told to do it. He claims it was an edict that came down on high. And to be fair, Wolverine in the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon, where he had appeared previously, has a less offensive Australian accent, but it's still there.
Mhm.
It is a natural Australian accent because just whoever the actor was from 9 years earlier just
Yeah.
sounded that way.
Well, it's interesting because if you're going to have a character that is going to be like a character like Wolverine, and you're going to have him be Australian, you'd probably not name him Wolverine because Wolverines are native to
Not an
Canada.
Australian. Yeah, he'd
They're
be
not
called Dingo.
Australians.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'd be called Dingo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which would be hilarious. Could you imagine a character called Dingo running around like
but still with
Wolverine?
the claws.
Yeah, with
Yes.
the claws, just like running around like Dingo. Like, oh my god, just you do not want to screw with Dingo. Dingo is like Dingo. Oh god, Dingo's coming. Oh my god, guys, run! It's Dingo. Oh,
I mean that kind of fits his like original comic book like look better, not necessarily like physicality, but in terms of like he's supposed to be a really short guy that's just going around and killing people easily with his claws. Like I know that technically can still fit Wolverine, but like people think Wolverines are like so menacing, and people are like, oh, there's a dingo.
Dingoes are scary. I've met a dingo at a zoo, but Wolverines are little tiny things.
Yeah,
But dingoes are like
big,
Mhm.
dingoes are bigger. Dingoes are like dog sized, and they'll eat your baby apparently. So
Hey, you know what? At least they didn't originally design Logan's character to eat babies or think that was funny, because that's how Cockrum originally designed Kurt. He originally would have thought that it was funny to eat babies.
that's kind of funny. I was also going to use that segue about eating babies to go into Nightcrawler because he is way too into little girls in this episode. Way too into little girls.
There's a lot of flirting with Kitty. Yeah.
It's and then even like the little girl who loses her doll, he's just like, here, Liebchen. It's just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
And this is something we started talking about before the show started, before we were recording, and I was like, oh, we'll talk about it on the show. The 80s television shows, especially cartoons, they have this habit of taking an aspect of a character and like dialing it up to 100% in order to really establish it. And so yeah, Kurt is a character who is very flirty in the comics and likes to flirt. But it's like, okay, but can we dial it back on the 14-year-old, guys? Can we not have him so freaking flirty with the 14-year-old, especially after she said no like 18 times? Can we not? Like, oh my god.
His voice is so creepy too. Like and not in like a interesting way, like creepy, and I wouldn't want to be near Kurt in this show.
It's also very much a stereotype of, I mean, again, I'm trying to be fair. It is less jarring than the Wolverine voice, but it is very much a stereotype of, here's what a cartoon German person sounds like.
It's like two wild and crazy guys from SNL.
Yeah, or like it's the 80s. I learned what German people are from Hogan's Heroes, and this is how they sound. And like, that's,
there you go.
That's what it felt like. It didn't feel real. It's not, like they're trying to not make him scary. Like they very much don't want to give him the I am a Nazi vibe that was still very prevalent for German characters in the 80s. It's only barely the 80s. It's 1989 when this comes out. And I do remember, I was in ninth grade. I remember the lead up to this where they were publishing, Marvel was very excited. The X-Men are coming. The X-Men are coming to television. We've got the pilot. Stan was doing interviews about it and promoting this like on the circuit. It was showing up, and Marvel had this magazine called Marvel Age, which was basically it was their insider magazine, but it was a lot of promotion, self-promotion, because it was all Marvel stuff. And they would do layouts of this, and here are the model sheets, here are the characters. They were so excited about this thing, and Stan was like, it's gonna be great. It's Pride of the X-Men. It's everything that you always wanted. And so I was kind of excited for it, and I didn't hate it, because it was probably the best that it had been done so far. But it's a struggle. I mean, I acknowledge that it's a struggle at points. Kurt is super flirty with Kitty. Kitty's relationship to Kurt is it's supposed to be played for, here is this girl's prejudices because she treats him like a monster because of how he looks, which is in the comics a reaction that she initially had to him.
Oh yeah.
And when he first shows up, or when she first shows up, because he'd been around already, and then she sort of gradually gets over it, and they become best friends. But this is just a pilot, so they try to accomplish 2 years of story building in 22 minutes, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's painful in many ways, and especially the fact that he does a lot of let me kiss you on the hand, Fraulein, which it just it it could be cute if she were into it, and but I mean into it not like sexually, but like if she was charmed by him as a 14-year-old girl, then it's okay to have a playful relationship with a 14-year-old girl that's age appropriate. Since she's very clearly afraid of him, it comes across as super forceful and creepy.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's funny because so they actually do tell this exact same story in X-Men Evolution.
Mhm.
Um, it's almost the exact same thing where it's when Kitty first meets him, she's totally turned off by him. She's kind of afraid of him, and it's the same thing. But the difference is they're the same age, so
Mhm.
it's not as weird and creepy. And also, he's not as like on top of her. He's not as constantly trying to get her attention. Constantly. I mean, he does, but he's a little less you know, constant with it.
Mhm.
So that makes it a little bit more appropriate in that story. Yeah, it just does feel very like, oh my god. And then at the end when, he sacrifices himself or seems to sacrifice himself, and then her whole reaction is like, "Oh my gosh, he's dead and I never got to say I'm sorry." It's like, "Bitch, he's dead." Like, who cares if you said you're sorry, bitch? Like, like is there like you're only upset because you never said you're sorry? Like, what the fuck? But I mean, spoiler alert, he's not dead. But come on, like what the hell? That's your whole. That's why you're sad. Come on.
He's dead. How is this about me?
Yeah,
It's really-
exactly. That's exactly what it was.
I
It's like
you
he's
know
dead. How can I make it about me?
It's funny though, because there are certain comic people I know that would be like, "That's a perfect K characterization," because she's doing the white victim and all those criticisms. But we've
She'd grown
talked
out of
about
that by 89, though. See, that was the weird thing.
right.
This is Kitty. This book wants to have a couple different eras of X-Men happening in it. It's trying to do Welcome to the X-Men Kitty Pryde, which is one of her earliest stories.
Mhm.
But we've tossed in Dazzler in her then modern, freshly modern costume, in her
Mhm.
1989 costume. um we're trying to make White Queen an important character. Like they're trying to have like these, here are the greatest hits, the most important X-Men characters, and we want this to be a storyline that makes sense. But it feels kind of dated, even for didactic 80s television. But it probably isn't. Like I'm thinking of the cartoons that are being played, and I'm still watching cartoons. Like I said, I would have been in ninth grade, but I was a geek, so I'm like watching kids cartoons because I like them, realizing that like very well aware at that time that, oh god, some of this stuff is just really childish and heavy-handed. And there's a lot of cartoons like let's we've got half an hour to make this superhero story, but the real message has got to be, don't do drugs, kids. Like that's what 80s cartoons are at this point. It
Yeah.
is super heavy-handed, and this is trying to not be that. This is trying to put story first. It's also very much trying to do the work of being a pilot. We have to make sure that who Kitty Pryde is. You have to know who Professor X is. You have to know who the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are going to be, because they're going to be our antagonists. So we're introducing a lot of bad guys in here and a lot of good guys. And they have the Jim Shooter comics moment. Every comic is somebody's first, and this really is at your first. So hi, this is Peter Rasputin, the Colossus, and he has the power to be impervious to harm. And here is Cyclops with his ruby blast. It's a lot of, let me just say your name and describe what your ability is,
Can
because
I
we've got to get it out there.
I love that part, and I actually wrote down my favorite part of that entire scene where he's describing all the characters and what their powers are, cuz at the end he's like, "Storm, she can do the weather. We don't really understand how." And it's like, I loved that. It was like, we don't even know how. It was just like, it was like, she can do the weather and whatever. It felt like a very, and then there's a Maude moment. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like, what do you mean you don't understand how? Like,
Because
you're telling me you understand exactly how Nightcrawler teleports. You understand exactly
my
how
favorite one.
Cyclops like puts out he does the fucking things out of his eyes, but the storm doing the weather. Oh, it's totally outside of our purview. We have no fucking idea. No clue.
idea how it
Like,
works.
no clue. Like these women and their powers. I mean, who knows? I mean, like maybe it's a female troubles thing. We don't know. We don't ask questions.
Yeah.
I mean,
Her power to control the weather is still not fully understood. Is how Xavier
well,
puts it.
I
And
mean,
like,
it's also funny because
what do
that
you
should be
mean?
the one they understand the most, because it's just understanding weather and the earth,
High
and
pressure
then how,
front, yes.
you know, she just she just manipulates it. But the
It's
fact
like, do you
that
want to call Al Roker? Let's call Al Roker down here and have him explain it to you, Xavier.
right, but like, Scott's powers and Kurt both require them going to different dimensions, but we understand that.
Yeah,
or
like,
maybe
Colossus turns to metal. Totally get it. Totally understand it. This woman makes a cloud.
Rain.
Listen, don't ask me. Don't ask me.
I mean,
I don't understand.
maybe it's a comment as well on how, like, no one still knows how to predict weather truly, because a meteorologist has the easiest job on the planet. They're like, it's gonna rain tomorrow. It's sunny the next day. Darn, we were wrong. We'll try again later. Like, how does that
Possible.
work?
It's possible.
Well,
And then there's Maude. I just loved it.
My favorite from that bit is Kurt's, because he's the one that Xavier's narration doesn't call it a power. For everybody else, he goes, he goes, storm's power to control the weather. Colossus has the power to be impervious. And then it's like, and Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, has mastered the art of line of sight teleportation. This thing that we can all do is master.
Let's all master that art.
It's one of those things where it's like, do I want to learn violin or teleporting?
Oh yeah, no, I remember that day in middle school. I ended up doing tethered swimming. Yeah, I remember that. That was that I didn't even catch that. That is so funny. And did you notice the sound he makes when he teleports? It's like a tinkle.
Bling. Yes.
Yeah, it's like it was the most. I mean, it's so funny because there are very few characters in comics that own their own onomatopoeia. It's like there's Snick,
Thwip, and Bamf.
And Bamf. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Even on the DC side, like that's it. Those three. And it's like, you give him a bling? What the hell are you doing? Where are you guys coming from? Like, come on. Like, the character's been around for 14 years at this point. Like, what's bling? Come on. Oh, and going back to the voice actors for a minute, why does Emma sound like Eartha Kitt? Where did that come from?
Jesus, I don't know.
That was sexy. It was 1989. That's how sexy sounded.
It's just like, Magneto, we're going to let's take down the X-Men. It's like, where'd this come from?
It
Emma
was trying to so there's this thing with Emma and with Magneto, definitely, but like even to a lesser extent, Pyro, Blob, and Toad and Juggernaut. There is very definitely we have to give them a little bit of evil in their voice. And Emma wants to be sexy because her, the Emma Frost character is about, especially for 1989, is very much about being a sex kitten. She's wearing lingerie, and that was a lot for 1989 children's cartoons. Her outfit gets her outfit's pretty damn scandalous for making television at that point. And I was, good on them for just kind of adapting the Hellfire Club aesthetic, but I think they very much wanted, in no uncertain terms, she is evil,
I feel like a lot of them, as far as the voices, they just really fall into these very clear tropes. Like the Eartha Kitt voice, I mean, it's like you want a sexy villain? Well, I mean, Eartha Kitt was Catwoman. That's a sexy villain. Okay, well, you're going to do the Eartha Kitt voice. And then you have Toad. Oh, you want a lackey? Well, we're going to find... Okay, Igor. That's it. You got a lackey. And it's just... They fall into those very clear tropes. And it's like, Toad...
Blob is dumb fat guy. And
yeah, exactly.
Because he's not dumb like that in the comics, but, no force on Earth can move D, Bob. It's like, what are you doing? It's like...
And it's like, I love that Colossus's first instinct is to pick Blob up. Like, what?
Like Blob is like twice his size.
Yeah, but like, I mean, what, punch him or like try to fight him? Like, no, we're just gonna pick him up. And what are you gonna do with him then, Peter? What are you gonna do with him then? Hug. Now what? Now exactly, like hug him.
Sometimes when two men really care for each other, I mean, you're women, you might not understand, but sometimes you meet another man and you embrace, and it's sort of a loving thing that I commend them for not being caught in the tropes of 1980s masculinity.
That's true. I actually do have a theory that like if the Blob and Juggernaut fought, it would just be them hugging.
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah. The unstoppable force versus the unmovable object. Mm-hmm. Forever.
Yeah, I think the show did like a lot of too many little things went wrong for it to work, like the dialogue and the voice acting and stuff. But like just the basics of like the teams, I liked that. Like they, again, because that's one thing that bothers me with 90s stuff that I think doesn't bother a lot of people, is that like everybody's like, oh yeah, these team lineups make sense, and I'm like, I guess, but also like I'm so stuck on the Claremont era when it first started. So it was nice to see that, and also see the Brotherhood in such a way. Now they demolished so many characters, but like they had the setup. The setup was good. They just needed way better execution. Way better.
Yeah.
Lisa's so broken about it.
I just question. I mean, you know what? Listen, maybe a woman approaching 40 now, I just am that maternal instinct is kicking in, but like I question the idea of being like, hey, we want to introduce this to a bunch of kids. Let's tease killing off a character in the very first episode.
So that's your deal breaker.
With trauma. It just felt like so traumatic. Like in the very first episode, it's like we're gonna have this one character like be a sex pest to this other character, and then we're gonna like kill him, and then we're gonna like make her regret how mean she was to him, even though he was kind of a sex pest. And then turns out that he wasn't dead, and it's like, oh my god, what lesson are we learning here? What's the lesson?
Mm-hmm.
You know what the lesson is? The lesson is that Wolverine was never going to be Australian. That's the fucking lesson.
No, it's not.
And thank God.
There were. I'm trying to think of one thing that I want to point out about Pride of the X-Men that I don't think is clear. I wonder how many of your listeners have actually watched it. I mean, certainly it's on YouTube. You can go watch it all in its entirety. It is the lineup, very much so, because if you haven't watched it, you might have at some point played the 1990s X-Men arcade game.
Yeah. So the cartoon Pride of the X-Men, the game is based on it. Yeah.
Yes. The game uses these character models. So it is very much except for Storm, I think they switched to the Mohawk costume. Isn't it? I haven't played in a long time. Let me look that up.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up and see, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it is for the most part the same characters are in this game. Yeah. I'm actually looking at Wikipedia. It says that this game, this show tied into the '89 game Madness in Murder World, and then also the Uncanny X-Men for Nintendo, and then the X-Men arcade game for Konami. Yes, so 3 games came out of this. So you know what? Some good came out of this.
She had the old costume still. I was wrong. She did not have the Mohawk costume. She's still, but yeah, it's very much the character designs of this game get thrown into the Konami game.
I remember playing that Konami game, and I remember playing Nightcrawler, and that game was awesome.
I mean, it's hard to mess up Kurt in a video game, because as long as you can decently do the teleporting thing, you're gonna have a good time. Like teleporting and swords, you're set. That's all you need.
bling, bling.
We should get a sound effect. We should clip that sound effect and use it on the pod from now on.
Bling. Could you imagine? That's our new thing if we're cursing. Bling, bling,
Blink.
God, oh my God. Watch when we cover the Draco, it's gonna be that thing of bling, bling, bling.
Girl, you're gonna give me so much work with that editing. I'm gonna do like 3 blinks and be like, I'm sorry guys, I can't censor anymore.
It's just the whole bling. It's just nothing but bling. Oh my goodness. Well, jeez. Well, Mav, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming and inflicting this on us.
Hey, I enjoyed it. I don't know what Lisa's talking about.
No, I
mean,
did enjoy it.
I want you to compare it, just make sure you watch the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends version, because that's what that's my primary comparison. I was, I read comics, so I knew who the X-Men were, but like with my comparison of what they could be in media, many of the same characters appear in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends episode 23, 20 something. It's the X-Men Adventure. Maybe it's 19. And in the X-Men Adventure of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, they very much they have Kitty, Kurt, Storm, and Thunderbird for reasons that are weird, even though
Thunderbird in there, yeah.
Thunderbird had been killed in his second appearance, but they opted to toss him in this cartoon anyway. And they also have and Cyclops. They also have somewhat offensive accents, but not as much so. What becomes interesting in that one is Kitty is very clearly in a relationship with Colossus, which she would have been at the time in the comics. And they try to represent it on the cartoon without there's a lot of, the bad guy attacks Kitty and she's like, well, wait till Colossus finds you, just sort of to key you in. This is wait till my boyfriend comes and gets you. And you're not really supposed to notice that, he is 20 or I think he's supposed to be 19 in the comics when she's 14.
Yeah.
And the so they really try to jump on the somewhat dating, if not sexual nature of their relationship. So that's the one, if I ever come back, that's the one I want everybody to watch is the whatever is the X-Men Adventure of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Because then I listen to, at least as we record, you guys were talking very much about Firestar on your most recent episode. So
I do love Firestar, yes.
You'll get a lot of Firestar in that, because that's where Firestar comes from, is that series. I
did notice. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, it's just it's unrelated. I also want to point out from that same episode, I've also never read Saga. It's one of my secret shames. I'm aware that I should. People keep it. It's like it's one of those, I literally, I do PhD. I do literary research into comics for a living. I've never read Saga. I just haven't gotten to it. I know I should. It's just that there's a lot.
I just took a screenshot of my face when you said you don't read Saga, so I can post it.
I know I should. I just haven't.
I can't.
It's on my bed right now. You want to join our Saga book club? I'm in a book club apparently now with my other friends. I read Saga, so we're all gonna talk about it at some point. But I've got volume 1 right here. It's $5. I was like, I guess I'm gonna read it.
I will say, I shouldn't say this on air because, I want everyone to think that I've done nothing but read X-Men comics my whole life and I've never ever taken a break from reading X-Men comics. But there was a dark time in X-Men comics that I didn't read them. And I didn't read any comics at all. But do you know what I always read? I always read Saga. I never stopped reading Saga until Brian came on.
Go betray me with a Saga cast then. Gosh, how dare you.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will get a Saga cast. All right, Saga cast coming soon. Who knows? I don't know. I ain't got time
you gotta
for
do
that.
the Austin run first. You gotta do the Austin run.
Austin run's coming.
You're legally obligated.
Yeah, Austin run's coming. All right, well, Matt, thank you again so much for coming. This has been a treat. It has been amazing. Where can everybody find you?
all over the place. In a perfect world, I'm on every podcast every week. We're
working on
I
it.
am regularly the host of VoxPopcast, which is it's a weekly pseudo-academic roundtable of pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. Where we every week we deconstruct some cultural issue. On the most recent episode, it was very serious. We talked about the censorship and book banning of Mouse that happened
nice.
recently.
Yeah.
But then on other episodes, we there's a lot of comic book episodes. Sometimes it's completely unrelated to comic books. It's always something that has to do with pop culture. I think we're doing fashion next week, and then we've got a show coming up on the new Batman movie. One of my favorite episodes ever was we talked about American Girl dolls, because I knew nothing about them at all. And
Oh my God, I
learned
love
about American
it.
Girl dolls.
I love that. I need to listen to that.
So it's literally every week we have a different panel of academics who get together and have a conversation about some pop culture issue while I drink beer.
That's amazing.
And then my other show, which you have been on, is Gosh, Oh Gosh, Oh Golly, Oh Wow, where we are reading every issue of the 1980s through 90s series Excalibur, one issue at a time every week, and we are going to go through every issue and deconstruct it. And that's also a pseudo academic podcast. I do shows where smart people act stupid.
I like that. That sounds good. I will say, I will say that I think that I was probably on one of the best episodes about one of the worst issues ever. So
yeah, you did. Do you remember your issue number?
I think it was. Oh God, what issue was it? Was it 37, 38, 39, something like that?
It's a Promethean Exchange episode, though, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
it's a
so
Promethean Exchange.
if you go and listen to
it's one of the
Promethean
Exchange issues. Yeah.
There are
the
Promethean Exchange is 3 issues of Excalibur that are quite possible my least 3 favorite comic books ever written. And
I did 38. It was issue
yes.
38.
Yeah, and not just of Excalibur. I mean, period. I just hate those comics. So Lisa was nice enough to come on and be our guest for that issue. So there's 3 weeks of our show where I do everything I can to not discuss the topic. I tried to derail the show. I'm like, I just don't want to do this at all.
I do recall at one point, like an hour and a half into our recording, saying, should we talk about the issue? Like, I do recall that. So
yeah, and I'm like, no, we're doing fine.
That's gonna be me during the Austin run. Like, you guys don't understand. Lisa is all in on this Austin run thing, like literally doing the entire thing, and I'm here like, girl, you know what? I'm gonna get drunk and do everything possible to not talk about it every time.
I have become like evangelical about Chuck Austin. I tell everybody about it.
It's scary.
I love it. Well, anyway, and then thank you, Mav, again so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It has been unbelievable. Please, guys, go check him out on the VoxPopcast and Oh Gosh, Oh Golly, Oh Wow, as well as
Twitter
everywhere else, and Twitter, and go knock on his door, go find him, stalk him, hide in his bushes. It's all good, I do. You can find us over on the simplyamazingpod.com. You can find all of our socials there. Our website, that's our website. You can find our Instagram, our Twitter. You can also find where to listen. If you like us, why don't you subscribe to us, or, leave us a little note. Say you like us. I know my mom did. So if you're cool like my mom, you'll do it too. If you're not cool, then you're not like my mom. So I don't know what to tell you about it. But Lauren, where can they find you?
Well, after I'm done laughing at everything you just said, y'all can find me on Twitter at friendlymBHCBI, and be sure to subscribe to our Twitch if you haven't already, because we did a live like a week ago or something from today's recording day, and it was a blast. We gave people lots of free stuff. We just sat around and goofed off for like an hour and a half. It was lots of fun, so we plan on doing that the
We probably won't
upcoming
release the
future.
live on because it was mostly us just giving away free stuff and drinking. So like
Yeah, I mean, if you
but,
want it, come bother us on Twitter. Like, shout out at us, be like, "Where's the live, you buttholes?" And we'll release it. But like, until then,
yeah. Although I don't tend to do things for people who call me buttholes, but Lauren does. So tell her. So. Well,
now I
guys,
need to throw
thank you.
myself away.
Oh, well, thank you again so much for tuning in. We love you all so much. And if you are out there somewhere and you've got a brand new teammate, her name is Kitty and she is 14 and she keeps telling you to leave her alone, do us a favor and leave her alone. But just don't forget that you're simply amazing.